Okay, part 3 of our notes on World War I. Today we're going to be talking about the end of the war. Okay, President Wilson had 14 points that he felt like needed to be followed to end the war. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but World War I was called the war to end all wars. And we know, unfortunately, that didn't happen. It was not even a generation later. We were in the middle of World War II. But President Wilson, because we had sent our troops, and it was actually America who had helped stop the war and helped end the war, we had a lot to say about how peace should be maintained. Okay, and so President Wilson said the U.S. war aims proposed by President Wilson as a basis for the treaty. He wanted to reorganize Europe based on nationalism, okay? And his plan was called Wilson's 14 Points. He said it's very important to break up the Central Powers. Don't let them get together again and create another war. He said we need to create new independent nation states. Let's remove trade barriers. Let's allow countries to trade without high tariffs. We need freedom of seas and lowering tariffs. If countries want to send things to the United States to trade, we should not charge high tariffs. And they should not charge high tariffs when we trade with them. He said, open diplomacy. There can be no secret treaties or alliances. Great Britain and Russia, you cannot agree secretly that you're going to defend each other and not let other countries know, etc., throughout Europe. And then he proposed the League of Nations, which was an international peacekeeping organization. It's actually the model for the United Nations that we have now. All right. So we're going to take a look here at this picture. And the question is, what are 3 things that you notice in the picture? And it seems like everyone is celebrating and happy. And then where might it take place? Probably in a city that had been, if you look there, it says Vive Wilson. That's French, so maybe Paris. And how would you think the people were feeling? I'll just answer that. It seems like they were very happy and celebrating. They certainly aren't social distance, so they apparently didn't have coronavirus back then. All right. Oh, this photograph is from Paris in 1918. President Wilson traveled to Paris to join other world leaders from the Paris Peace Conference at the end of World War I. The sign above the street reads Vive Wilson, which in French means long live Wilson. All right. The Treaty of Versailles. All right. Wilson and other allies traveled to Paris Peace Conference in 1918 to decide the peace. Wilson has to make several concessions. That means he has to agree or compromise to get his allies to agree to the League of Nations. The end result was the Treaty of Versailles. Okay. And this is President Wilson, and then here's some of the other world leaders, and they're all agreeing there to the Treaty of Versailles. All right. Going back, I'm not sure who each of those men are. I recognize their faces, but I'm not sure which one was which leader. So I won't tell you that because I'm not sure. I might be wrong. All right. So the end of World War I. This is very important. If you remember, I've often said one era leads to another era. All right. Nothing could be more true of that than World War I leading to World War II. Okay. The Treaty of Versailles dealt very harshly with Germany. And you remember, Germany isn't even the country that started the war. It just came in to defend the Central Powers because they were in that alliance system. But then Germany was the strongest and the largest nation involved. And so they are the one that gets the brunt of the punishment. Germany lost some territory, Rhineland and Poland, which is going to be very important because when Hitler comes to power, here's Poland, okay, and the Rhineland is in this area. And when Hitler came to power, he insisted that Poland should be Germany's all along, and that the Treaty of Versailles should have never taken it. Germany lost all of its overseas colonies. Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Turkey were broken into separate nation states. All right. Germany had to accept responsibility for starting the war. That's called the War Guilt Clause. Germany had to pay reparations to allies. Reparations. Don't forget that word right there, reparations. That means they had to make payback. They had to pay. And so part of the Treaty of Versailles said Germany has to pay the other European countries for the costs that they were out during the war. Okay. We'll talk more about that when we get to World War II, but that clause right there caused Germany, their economy to fail, and it's the main reason that Hitler was able to come to power. Germany also lost its navy, and it had to reduce its army to a defensive army only. Okay, and these two little things on there are just the two articles that explain what Germany had to do in the treaty. All right, the League of Nations was formed. It was created by President Wilson, and he wanted the United States to join the League of Nations. He said this will help prevent us from future wars. But in the United States, the politicians did not want to join the League of Nations. They said, no, that's going to drag the United States into more wars and more conflicts. We do not want to be involved. In the middle of this, President Wilson had a stroke, and he was not able to go around the country and campaign for the League of Nations like he would have normally. And so the people who were against it were able to continue to campaign, and they ended up winning the argument, and the United States never joined the League of Nations. Right? Henry Cabot Lodge, he is one of our vocab words. He was a senator who led the fight against the League of Nations. If you remember, he's a vocab word from our last unit. He was an imperialist, but he did not feel that the United States should join the League of Nations because he said, then other countries will be in control of what we do with our military. And so the Senate refused to ratify the League. And if you notice these political cartoons right here, it's very important to be able to interpret cartoons. This is Uncle Sam, and this says these are other nations, and you see how they're pulling them in all directions. And Henry Cabot Lodge and his followers said, we don't want the United States to be in that position. We want to be independent. And so after the war, the United States returned to its policy of isolationism, which means that we are not going to get involved in affairs of other countries. And you see this political cartoon. It says the League of Nations is a bridge that was designed by President of the United States. Here's Belgium and France and England and Italy. And if you see right here, the keystone is a keystone in a bridge or a span is the stone that holds it all together. And if you see right here, Uncle Sam is leaning on that keystone of the United States, and he is not allowing that keystone to be put in the bridge. And so it says the gap in the bridge is the United States. So this political cartoonist is obviously saying that the problems that Americans are going to, or that the world is going to have in the future may come about because the United States is not involved in the League of Nations. Right? And that concludes our notes, our fill-in-the-blank notes for World War I.